Hey everyone, my name is Nikki. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to tell you the 6 things that I would do differently if I were to build a mobile sauna again. Let's get right into it. So the first thing is how tall we built the structure. It didn't need to be as tall as it was. I think it's like on the outside, probably like over 9 feet tall. And I wouldn't say it's too tall, like you can totally drive around with that tall of a trailer or a RV. However, it just feels really tall pulling it behind my Tacoma. And maybe it would be different if I had a bigger truck, but I would build it shorter. And the reason why we built it so tall was at the time we were living in a basement suite and we were like just so desperate to be able to like stretch up and move in ways that felt really restrictive in the house. So we went with it to be taller so we could do that in the sauna, and we literally never did that. So that's the first thing I would do, build it a little shorter. That goes on to my next thing I would do differently, which is I would increase the pitch of the roof. So we went with something pretty flat, and that was because I liked the look of it and I didn't want like a really extreme pitch, and it seemed like it would be weird to drive around with it if it had more of a pitch. So we went with like bare minimum. And then I found myself at times worrying about drainage, even though it has a bit of a slope and everything is waterproofed, I still worried about it. And I think it would actually look a little cooler with a bit more of a pitch on the roof. So that's the second thing I would change, is the pitch of the roof. Yeah. Then the next thing, we're kind of going exterior to start, and then I have a couple interior. So the next thing is the siding. In my last video, and if you haven't watched those, I'll link the playlist here, I talked about how difficult it was to work with the metal siding. Now, we're not experts. I'm not experienced other than this project. I've done some other things now, but at the time, like, it was so difficult to work with. The metal's really unforgiving, and also it's pretty expensive. And we had to custom order all of our trim and all of the panels and all of that. And that made it really high stakes if we made a mistake, and it was easy to make mistakes with the metal. That said, it's super robust. It'll last literally forever. Like, that siding will never need to be changed. And it looks really cool. But it was so hard to work with. And if you're a beginner and you're just doing it yourself and you don't have all of the siding tools and roofing metal tools to work with, all of the seamers and tin snips and stuff that's like really specific to that material, it's just not worth it. Like, we put off finishing that part of the project for months because it just was such a headache, but it also felt really good when we got it done. The other thing that we would change is where we put the controls. So for the USB port and the light switches, we put them on the outside. And that was partially because we didn't want the heat to melt the light switches. And we got some metal ones, but it was still, yeah, not super ideal to have them inside. So now looking back, that would have made the siding a lot easier, and we should have done that. So bring them inside. It also would have like simplified, well, I guess the electrical wouldn't really change. It just goes outside instead of inside, but I think that would have made it a little bit simpler for the siding and just kind of like taking care of one of the headaches, and then just put the switches low enough that they won't reach the like high heat that's up high in the sauna. So the next thing is the interior / exterior that I would change, and that's the height of the window. So where we put the window was kind of eyeballing it where we were going to put the bench, because we didn't decide all of those things at the same time. And if I could go back, I would do it really diligently, where I'm like, okay, if this is the height that I'll be sitting at, I want the window to be able to just like, I just want to easily look out of it. And what I would often find myself doing is like dipping my head. So being really precise about where I put the window relative to the bench That would be something I would change. And then I think in a perfect world, I would just have a huge window. This worked great for the context we were in. The trailer or the mobile sauna was parked in our driveway. And so it's like, I wouldn't really want a bigger window because then more people could see in, and it was pretty difficult to see in with the window we had. But I think in a perfect world, I would have like a full glass side to my sauna, but I would also want that in a more private area. And the last thing is the bench height of the bottom bench. So we built it quite low relative to the upper bench. So that made getting on and off the top bench where we mostly sat pretty tricky. And we had built the bottom benches to be mobile, so they could go against the far wall or tuck way under. And I did that because I wasn't ready to commit to where I wanted them, and I couldn't figure out how to install them in a secure way into the walls in a really minimalist way and also not be too close to the stove. And so I think now what I would do is build them a little bit taller to make that step down from the top bench a little easier, and also find some way to fix them to the structure. I think it is really nice to be able to move them. It was nice to be able to move them across and be able to sit across from people when we had a full house, so to say. And yeah, I think that's something that I would do differently. But those are kind of the main things. And I think for my first build, for my first sauna build, it was a really well done project. And there's like nothing major that I would do differently. I think the stove was perfect for the size of the structure. The cedar tongue and groove was amazing. And yeah, overall, I'm really happy with it. That said, we did sell it to our friends who lived a couple blocks away from us when we moved to a different city. It's a town. It's a very small town. We were in a big city. And yeah, so it's still kind of in the family and close to where it was. And I'm really proud of it, and they're loving it by the sounds of it. So yeah, really happy with that. To round out this video, there were some questions that popped up in my comments on the sauna build videos. And so I'm gonna address some of those, but first I'm gonna have a little sip of tea and pull them up. So yeah, thank you so much for asking questions and sharing your curiosities. It's really nice to be able to offer some insight again, like I'm not an expert, and I do have some experience. And one of the things that I found when I built this was that there wasn't a lot of good information on YouTube about this. There was things here and there, but as like a comprehensive, this is what you do when you build a mobile sauna, there wasn't much. So there's a little bit more now. Like I said, we built it back in 2022. And sauna culture has kind of taken off in North America anyway. I know it's always been taking off in other parts of the world, but here it's a little more common and more people are posting how they're doing things, which is really great. Okay, so the first question that I'll address is, if I'm not using metal siding like we did, what siding would I use? And the answer is some kind of, what's it called? Board and batten. So I think that look can be really minimalist and kind of give the same effect that the corrugated metal did, and would be just way easier and way more affordable to work with. I think it's typically vinyl, and that's what I would go with. I think there's just a bit more sureness in the waterproofing when you use a synthetic material like that, and it would be, I think, a little bit lighter than doing some kind of wood on the outside and wouldn't require as much maintenance. The other question that came up was, you added mesh screen. Is it underneath the trailer deck? So we had the deck of the trailer, and then we put the mesh screen, and then we put our cedar floor. So water could still drain through, but nothing could come up between those layers of wood and mesh. And the mesh was like a steel mesh, so it wasn't plastic, so it should last a really long time. And the next question was, is the deck made of treated wood or regular? And it was pressure treated wood, and we chose that because it will be exposed to the elements and potentially water coming down. Now that said, we didn't really do a lot of like dumping water on ourselves, and sweat would certainly drip down and kind of find its way out, but it wasn't as wet in there as I think I assumed it would be, and that might be different. Like if you know you sweat a lot, you might want to consider that in what you're doing, but I don't know what you would do differently, to be honest. On Reddit, someone says it's best to not use knotted wood above waist height, since they eventually might fall out from the expanding and contraction. It didn't happen, you did it. So what Ilya is saying is the wood expands and contracts, and if there's knots at certain heights, that wood will eventually like spit the knots out. That didn't happen to us, and I don't think it's necessary to use clear cedar for the benches or for the walls at all. I think if you have the budget to do it, do it. But if you're a person who is trying to do this with minimal amount of money, then doing the clear isn't necessary. And we didn't have any issues with knots popping out. We didn't have any issues with it like burning us. I did try to use the clearest pieces higher up on the wall that like we would lean against, but I don't think it's necessary to go like completely clear. And as long as you're not like splashing tons and tons and tons of water onto the tongue and groove, which I don't know what would be going on for that to happen, I don't think it's necessary. Someone might disagree, but yeah, I don't think it's necessary. And then any cost-cutting tips? Yeah, so we spent, give or take, around $13,000 on this. So the first cost-cutting tip would be to build it now. When we were building it, it was 2022, and a 2x4 was $10. So that's gonna cut your costs tremendously. I went into Home Depot the other day just to see what lumber prices were, and they're like a 2x4 is hovering around like $4.50 Canadian. So you'll save a lot of money just by building it now and not then. And then the other thing too is like we built our benches with clear cedar. I don't think that's totally necessary. I wanted to do it. I'm glad we did. It's beautiful. But again, I don't think it's totally necessary. And there's a lot of debate about it. I would say like, let that go. If you build your benches out of knotty cedar, you can also always replace boards. So yeah, I don't think that's necessary, and that would save you a lot of money for sure. Again, the siding would save you money. The metal siding was all custom ordered and fairly expensive. And I think a vinyl siding would be a little bit more cost effective. Yeah, there's more upkeep and it will break down eventually in a way that the metal won't. But I think it's kind of like a payoff of it being a little bit more affordable. And I think if you take care of things, like they tend to last. So, you know, giving that vinyl siding a scrub every now and then, and if there's any way to like treat it or make sure that it doesn't break down as quickly, like that would be the strategy. And then otherwise, other cost-cutting tips, you could find a trailer that's already good to go and maybe a affordable price. Like we didn't include the cost of the trailer in that breakdown of costs in my last video, but you could find one that's already good to go and you wouldn't have to spend the like $800 to put new tires on it and refinish it and do all of that. So those would be the things that come to mind. Obviously like solar, you could wire everything and then wait to buy the battery and solar panel if you want to down the road. And then the other thing you could do to save on money is build your door. We weren't willing to do that. It was about $1,200, but building a door felt like the last thing I wanted to do. And yeah, So we didn't, and we bought one that was prefabricated and had a window in it. And so you could easily build a door that doesn't have a window in it. And then to build one with a window in it, I think that would probably be pretty tough, but doable. So shout out Ilya for all your questions and the other folks asking questions. Really appreciate the engagement. And if you're building a sauna, like, good luck. I hope it's everything you want it to be. And I think that's the biggest thing is, like, do it. It's a great decision. One of the best decisions I've ever made was building that sauna, even though we don't even have it anymore. It was awesome. And yeah, I'm really grateful for the experience. If you've gotten something out of this video, if you've enjoyed the time, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and it's much appreciated. Wishing you a beautiful week. Let's go take a look at this guy. We did it! We did the sauna, what I would do differently video. What do you think, bud? Did I do a pretty good job? Did I only make a few mistakes? Yeah? Thanks for being my cheerleader over here, sleeping on the job.